Thank you very much for the introduction. Diffusion spectrum imaging is become an important tool for studying the microstructure of biological tissue. However, obtaining highly detailed diffusion information often comes with the cost of a very high acquisition time. So this challenge motivated the work I present today. So the following presentation is structured in these following parts. First, I will briefly introduce DSI, then explain why undersampling is an important challenge. After, I will present the synthetic data generation, the reconstruction network, and the loss function design. Finally, I will show the reconstruction results and discuss the potential of deep learning. So, DSI, and fortunately we already heard something about MRI. So DSI is an advanced diffusion MRI technique used to characterize diffusion of water molecules within biological tissue. During the measurements, diffusion encoding gradients are applied in many directions, as you see on the left side. The resulting measurements are collected in the so-called Q-space. The Q-space contains information about the underlying diffusion process within the tissue. By applying a Fourier transformation, the Q-space can be transformed into the diffusion domain known as R-space. And that could be used to construct complex fiber structure, for example. DSI provides detailed information about tissue structure, but it requires many Q-space measurements. This means that 100 of individual diffusion measurements have to be acquired during a single scan, or even more. Long scan times are problematic for several reasons. We already heard something about it, but for example, it reduces patient conform and increased the likelihood of motion artifacts. Or in clinical environment, long scan times is a critical factor for use case in everyday use. Yes, a solution of this problem can be to only scan a subset of the measurements and reconstruct the missing information from the Q-space afterwards. Since fully sampled DSI data are difficult to acquire, a synthetic dataset was generated for training and evaluation. The simulation starts in the airspace, where different fiber configurations are modeled using diffusion tensors. The result is a three-dimensional diffusion volume with a resolution of 33 by 33 by 33 voxels. A Fourier transformation is then applied to obtain the corresponding Q-space. In totally, 10,000 fully sampled datasets were generated and used as ground truth. Once Q-space data were available, the next step was to simulate realistic acquisition conditions by removing measurements. This means only a subset of Q-space points are retained. The image on this slide shows representatively cross-sectional slice through the Q-space volume from different undersampling rates. So on the left side, you see a full sampled Q-space, and the information decrease with an increasing of the sample rate. So the reconstruction was performed by a complex value 3D unit. Unlike standard network, it perceived both magnitude and phase information. The encoder extracted feature from the undersampled Q-space data, while the decoder reconstructs the missing information. Residual and skip connection help preserve structural details and improve training stability. As you can see, the input was an undersampled Q-space, and the output is a fully reconstructed, complex, valued Q-space. Designing the loss function turns out to be one of the most important parts of the work. A simple reconstruction loss, such as mean squared error, only measures numerical difference between prediction and target. However, DSI reconstruction is different properties of the signal is important for DSI reconstruction. So we need to preserve not only the overall amplitude distribution, but also the phase information, the global signal energy, and the, sorry. Yeah. So I will not go to every individual loss term in detail, as that would be beyond the scope of this presentation. As I told, the main idea is that different loss terms focus on different properties. During the development, it became clear that not a single loss function was sufficient for its own. Among all investigated components, two has the most impact of these. Don't worry, I won't go to all the mathematics, but to propose of this slide is mainly to provide an overview of the most influential loss components. During the experiments, the weighted log magnitude loss proved to be particularly important for the preserving the overall signal distribution, especially in regions with low energy. The second one was the Wasserstein loss. The Wasserstein loss was very important for the overall structure. And before showing the best reconstruction result, I would like to present a more challenging example. In this case, the original Q-space signal already contained relatively little information and only weak signal intensity. As a consequence, the reconstruction task becomes significantly more difficult because the network has less available information from which it can infer the missing measurements. Maybe you see the arrow map looks kind of very bad, but you have to be careful. Because in low intensity area, there is a little absolutely change. The signal is almost zero at these arrows. So with a little change of an absolutely number, the percentage error getting pretty high. So that's why the arrow map down looks pretty worse. But in contrast, this example shows a reconstruction with a richer and more pronounced Q-space structure. The prediction and reference signal shows strong visual agreement across all displays. The main structure feature intensity distribution are preserved. Overall, this example illustrates the reconstruction possibility of the network. Before concluding, I would like to briefly summarize the recognition performance across different undersampling rates. This figure shows the global percentage error as a function over the keep fraction. As example, the reconstruction error increase if fewer Q-space measurements are available. However, the increase is relatively moderate. Even only 25% of the original data were available, the error is still below 4%. And even in the most extreme case where only 10% were still available, the error is still around 8%. So the results presented today shows that deep learning can reconstruct highly undersampled DSI data from synthetic data measurements. However, there are still several challenges to address. Obviously, this was on a synthetic data set. So we have to use it on a clinical environment. Second, we already know a lot about the physics that behind the DSI. But maybe we can improve the performance of the networks if we directly integrate this knowledge into the net. Yeah, and then I just have to say thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. Do we have questions? Yeah, in the front here.
Hey, thanks for the talk. Can this synthetic dataset be used still as a prior for the neural network when you transfer to real-world data, or do you plan to retrain again?
I think it can, but it depends a little bit. So I designed the network that it isn't very, very strict with the dimension the input comes. So it can handle larger input data or something like that. So I think you have to give it a try. I don't know, to be honest, but I think it would be possible, yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Maybe I can ask a very quick question. I was wondering, in your last slides where you showed the failure modes of the network, is there a way to quantify uncertainty over the quality of the reconstruction, like to have some gates to even prevent reconstruction when it would be very uncertain and very error-prone?
Sorry, I didn't understand it.
I was just wondering to quantify uncertainty over the quality of the reconstruction that you're doing with your model.
Yes.
Would there be a way to do that? Have you investigated this?
I think it should be possible, yes, but I haven't tried it yet. So.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well then, thank you again for the presentation, and I think we need to move on in the interest of time.